Hello and welcome to this edition of Eye on Africa. I'm Haxie Myers-Belkin. The headlines. Liberia's Supreme Court orders a temporary halt to preparations for next week's presidential runoff, as it gears up to decide whether or not there were irregularities in the first round of voting. Human Rights Watch claims that Rwandan security services are behind the extrajudicial killings of 37 people. The Rwandan government says some of the alleged victims aren't even dead. France 24 tries to get to the truth. And with African art increasingly in demand on the international art scene, we head to Nigeria to take a look at the first ever edition of the Lagos Biennial. Hello again, thank you very much for tuning in. Preparations for next week's presidential runoff in Liberia have been halted by the country's Supreme Court following complaints of fraud in the first round. Ex-football star George Weah and Vice President Joseph Boakai are supposed to go head-to-head on the 7th of November, but the candidate for the Liberty Party, Charles Brumskin, who came third in the first round, has challenged the result, accusing outgoing President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of interference. Clement Bonero reports.
Hitting back at accusations she interfered in the presidential election, outgoing leader Ellen Johnson Sirleaf said the allegations are completely baseless and aimed at undermining Liberia's democracy.
At the first round of the election process that has ended, and since then there have been some complaints, some challenges to the results of that election. That process is ongoing in keeping with the rule of law.
Ex-football star George Weah and Vice President Joseph Boakai are due to go head-to-head on Tuesday after winning 38% and 29% of the vote respectively in the first round on October 10th. Charles Brumskin of the Liberty Party, however, who came third, has challenged the result and lodged a complaint with the National Elections Commission. He says there's been widespread fraud and irregularities and accuses President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of interference because she met electoral officials before the vote. An accusation also backed by two other political parties, including the ruling Unity Party, now led by Joseph Boakai and previously headed up by Sirleaf. Boakai says Sirleaf is secretly in favour of George Weah.
We reaffirm our stated solidarity with the Liberty Party and all other political parties and candidates that feel offended and have strong reasons to believe that the October 10, 2017 polls were characterized by massive systematic irregularities and fraud.
The Supreme Court says the election will be postponed until allegations of fraud are properly investigated. Representatives of the Liberty Party and the Electoral Commission are expected to present their cases on Thursday.
A suicide bomber described as a young girl by witnesses has killed herself and 5 other children in a blast in northern Cameroon. 2 others were wounded. The attack happened in the village of Zamga, just 2 kilometres from the Nigerian border, in a region plagued by regular attacks carried out by Islamist insurgents Boko Haram. Zigoto Chaya reports from Yaoundé.
According to witnesses, a young girl suicide bomber slipped in among a group of young children who were playing and triggered her explosive charge, killing 5 children and 2 wounded. This happened in the far north region of Cameroon in a small locality called Zamga. Boko Haram for many years have recruited, abducted, as well as hypnotized many young girls and used them as suicide bombers. The use of young girls in these Boko Haram activities is alarming because most of the young girls and children are under the ages 15.
A Rwandan journalist serving a 25-year sentence for conspiracy against the government has escaped from jail. Cassien Ntemuanga, along with 2 other inmates, used ropes to climb over a prison wall. The journalist's sentencing in 2015 sparked outrage among human rights groups, which accused the Rwandan government of using intimidation and imprisonment to clamp down on dissent. Rwanda's government denies the allegations. Now, that prison escape comes amid an ongoing standoff between Rwandan authorities and Human Rights Watch. In July, the advocacy group claimed that various arms of the security services were responsible for the extrajudicial killings of 37 people for crimes as minor as stealing cattle or motorbikes. Rwanda's National Commission for Human Rights, in turn, insisted that some of the alleged victims were in fact still alive or had died of natural causes. Faced with two very different stories, France 24's Thijs Broek conducted his own investigation.
It is as if he's back from the dead. Alphonse Majombere was summarily executed by Rwandan police on the 22nd of September last year for stealing a cow, according to Human Rights Watch.
When I was told about this, it scared me. I wanted to know, how was this person able to get such information? Because I'm alive and I'm not a thief. I'm alive and they found me here.
This has fed allegations that a Human Rights Watch report is fabricated. In July this year, the NGO documented 37 cases of alleged extrajudicial killings by Rwandan security forces. Rwanda's own Human Rights Commission has sought to discredit the report.
There are 7 people that we have found alive. There are 4 who have died of natural causes, and there are 10 who we haven't found but have been reported missing. Also, there are others who were killed by other people due to personal disputes.
But Rwanda's rebuttal has several discrepancies. The Alphonse Majombere we were introduced to lives in an area known as Boneza, while the case cited by Human Rights Watch centres on neighbouring Nyagahinika. We found his village in this valley. Off camera, this witness assures us that Alphonse Majombere was killed for stealing a cow and that he was 36 years old.
He had definitely become a thief, and I did not see him much. He was accused of stealing cows. He'd been living with his grandparents, but they died.
The interview is interrupted by the local authorities. Could the first Alphonse be a namesake? It's impossible to confirm. We pursue another case. One of the best documented by Human Rights Watch is that of Fulgent Rukondo. In another village, several people recall a day in December last year.
They said he stole a cow. They brought him here and dumped a carcass with him. And then they called the soldiers. They brought him up here and then they shot him down there. We were behind them. There was a whole crowd because we were going to play football.
The testimony is identical to the Human Rights Watch report. Rwanda's Human Rights Commission acknowledges Rukundo was killed by the military, but claims he was trying to cross the border with Congo illegally.
And finally, the African art market is experiencing something of a boom these days. The London-based auction house Bonhams now regularly finds itself selling African works for 3 times the estimated price, with Nigerian artists in particularly high demand. Keen to capitalise on the global appetite for its art scene, Lagos is for the first time hosting its own Biennial. Our correspondent Anna Cunningham went to check it out.
It's called The Red Day. That's the title of this work created by the Nigerian contemporary sculptor and performance artist Jelili Atiku. The multimedia artist specialises in work focusing on human rights and justice issues. For the first Lagos Biennale, his performance was about the victims of Biafra.
To me as an artist, I want to add my voice to that. And so that is the impulse behind the performance, and also for me to let them think, they recall the memory of the Biafra War, the first one, how a lot of people died out, a lot of blood was split. And how horrible it was at that time.
Inside an old disused railway shed, the carriages and walls have become a gallery for the varied works of art. Photos depicting a life beyond Boko Haram. Sculptures in wood representing corruption in Nigeria. And installations that seek to address the electricity and economic problems across the country. This first Lagos Biennale had little funding, But organisers hope this will showcase some of what Nigerian artists have to offer.
We love the fact that we're African, but this is firstly for, an international audience, but also international participation, because there's no way we can exclude ourselves or create a bubble, from the whole world.
As Nigerian art attracts a bigger audience, those involved in this exhibition hope they have played a part in demonstrating Nigerian artistic talent.
Well, that artistic interlude brings us to the end of this edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you very much for watching. There's more world news and comment coming up in just a few minutes with Thomas Waterhouse.